The screen fades from black. A soft breeze moves across the golden fields of Heartland. Horses gallop in the distance as the narrator's voice breaks the silence. Sometimes love doesn't end. It just waits through distance, through pain, through all the years that try to break it. And today, after years apart, Ty and Amy find their way back to each other. But this reunion isn't simple. It's raw, real, and filled with everything left unsaid. This is the story of how love, no matter how long it's been gone, can still come home. Fade to a soft instrumental. Camera glides across the familiar red barn and Heartland Ranch house. The title appears, "The morning sun touched the hills of Heartland, casting light over the quiet ranch." The horses were restless that day, as if they could sense something was about to change. Amy stood near the paddock, brushing the mane of her favorite horse, Spartan. Her hands moved gently, but her eyes carried years of loneliness. It had been a long time since Ty walked these fields. It's too long. The world had moved on. Seasons passed. Their daughter Lyndy had grown taller, and yet Amy's heart still waited. Every creak of the barn door, every footstep in the gravel, she still hoped. For just a second that it might be him. But Ty was far away. Or at least, that's what everyone believed. After leaving on a medical mission to help remote communities, letters had stopped coming. Months turned into years. Some said he had chosen that life, a life far from Heartland. Others whispered that maybe he was gone for good. Amy never answered them. She buried her grief in work, helping horses, mending fences, smiling for Lyndy's sake. Her father, Tim, often said she was strong like her mother, Marion. But deep inside, Amy wasn't sure if strength was really what kept her going, or just the fear of falling apart. On that day, as the wind carried the sound of distant thunder, something felt different. Lou had driven into town early. Jack was fixing a gate by the west pasture, and Amy found herself standing alone near the corral. Spartan nudged her shoulder, restless. A storm was coming, not one that could be seen in the clouds, but one that would change everything. She looked up at the sky and whispered softly, "You'd love this morning, Ty. It feels like the start of something new." Little did she know. Miles away, a rider was making his way toward Heartland. Dust rose beneath his horse's hooves, and the weight of the past clung to his every breath. He hadn't been here in years, but the sound of the ranch wind, the scent of pine, and the memory of Amy's laughter still lived in his mind. Each step closer felt heavier, not because of distance, but because of everything he had left behind. He had promised himself this was just a visit, nothing more. But some promises are meant to be broken, especially when love calls you home. The rain began softly that afternoon, not harsh, not wild, just gentle enough to remind Amy of the days she used to watch storms with Ty. Those were the quiet moments they shared. When words didn't matter, man, love spoke in the silence between raindrops. But silence had become her only companion since he left. Years ago, when Ty decided to leave for the medical mission in Mongolia, Amy had stood by him. She believed in his purpose, his need to help others. But she never expected how far that choice would carry him, not just in distance, but in spirit. What was supposed to be a year turned into many? Messages became shorter, calls became rare, and then one day, they just stopped. No goodbye. No explanation. Only absence. Heartland changed after that. Amy learned to live again, though never quite the same. She poured her soul into horses, healing them the way she once healed Ty. Her daughter Lyndy was her strength. Every time Lyndy asked about her father, Amy told stories about how brave he was, how he saved lives, how he promised he'd come home. But deep down, even she wasn't sure if that promise was still alive. Meanwhile, far from home, Ty's life wasn't what anyone imagined. The work was hard, the land was rough, and the nights were long. He saw faces of people who needed him. And yet every time he helped someone heal, it reminded him of what he had broken: his family, his marriage. Himself, he carried Amy's photo in his pack, folded and worn at the edges. He'd look at it under the dim light of a lantern, wondering if she still thought of him, or if Heartland had moved on without him. Sometimes, he'd write letters pages filled with the truth he never sent. Regret, guilt, longing, but those words never reached her. He didn't have the courage to face what he'd done. Back at the ranch, Amy often walked to the riverbank where they once shared their first kiss. She'd sit there with Lyndy, telling her about how her dad once fished from that very spot. The same tree still stood there, though time had scarred its bark, much like their love. Everyone at Heartland learned to stop asking about Ty, even Jack, who had always seen him as a son, spoke of him less and less. The pain had turned into quiet acceptance. Life moved forward, but the past was still stitched into every corner of that ranch. As the rain stopped, Amy wiped her hands on her jeans and looked toward the open road beyond the fields. Something stirred inside her, a feeling she couldn't explain. Maybe it was hope, maybe it was heartbreak, but somewhere out there, Ty had already crossed that same road. He was on his way back, unaware that the past he left behind was waiting not to forgive, but to confront him, because sometimes coming home isn't about finding peace. It's about facing the storm you ran from. The wind carried a quiet chill across the open plains. The mountains in the distance were half hidden under clouds, their peaks touched by morning light. The road that led to Heartland was long and lonely, twisting through valleys and across shallow rivers. On that road, a lone rider moved, steady, quiet, unseen. It was Ty. He rode like a man chasing ghosts. His coat was dusty, his eyes shadowed from the weight of time. Years had written lines across his face, not from age, but from stories that no one else had heard. His hands gripped the reins loosely. The same hands that once built fences with Jack, fixed saddles with Amy, and carried Lyndy when she was just a baby. Every hoofbeat echoed in his chest, a reminder of what he had left behind. He had told himself this was just a visit, a chance to check on the people he once called family. But in his heart, he knew the truth. This wasn't a visit. It was a reckoning. As he reached the top of the ridge, Heartland appeared below him, quiet, golden in the afternoon sun. The red barn stood exactly as he remembered. The windmill still turned slowly beside the old farmhouse. Even from a distance, he could see horses grazing near the fence line. And one of them, a tall bay stallion, lifted its head as if it recognized him. Spartan Ty smiled faintly. "You still remember me, old friend?" he whispered. But as he looked at the ranch, another feeling settled in fear. What if Amy didn't want to see him? What if the life he once had was no longer his to return to? He thought of Lyndy, the little girl whose laughter once filled his mornings. Would she even know who he was now? Or had he become a stranger in his own story? Ty stopped at the old wooden sign that read Heartland Ranch. His fingers brushed the carved letters, rough and familiar. Memories flooded back Amy's smile, the smell of hay, the sound of rain on the barn roof. For a moment, his eyes burned with tears he didn't let fall. He tied his horse near the gate and stood there, frozen between the past and the present. Back at the ranch, Amy was tending to a new colt, unaware of the shadow standing at the edge of her world. The afternoon sun cast long, soft lines across her face, and for the first time in a long while, she laughed, a quiet, natural laugh that reached across the field. Ty heard it. It stopped him in his tracks. That sound, that gentle laugh, was the one thing that had kept him alive through all those lonely years. He closed his eyes, and for a brief second, it felt like time had folded in on itself. The distance between them vanished, replaced by the memory of love that never really left. He wanted to walk forward, to call her name, to say all the things he never said, but his feet wouldn't move. Sometimes, the hardest step isn't the one that takes you away, it's the one that brings you back. So he waited. Hidden by the tall grass, by fear, by guilt, watching her, listening, and somewhere deep in his heart, he knew this was the beginning of everything. Again, the sky hung low over Heartland, painted in the soft colors of evening gold fading into blue. The air carried that quiet stillness that comes just before something life-changing happens. Amy led Spartan back toward the barn, her boots crunching over gravel, her mind lost in thoughts of another ordinary day. But this was no ordinary day behind her. Just beyond the old oak tree near the fence line, Ty stood. He hadn't moved for what felt like hours. The ranch was so close now, he could hear the rustle of hay, the creak of the stable doors, even Amy's voice, calm and gentle as she spoke to the horses. That voice had never left him, not even in the far corners of the world. He took a breath, then another. His heart pounded louder than the wind. He stepped forward. The sound of his boots against the dirt made Amy turn. At first, she thought it was Jack, or maybe Tim coming back early. But then, she froze, her eyes locked on the figure walking toward her slow, unsure, like a ghost that didn't belong to this world. The setting sun caught his face, and for a heartbeat, Amy forgot how to breathe. The years between them vanished in that single moment. It was him. Ty, no words, no music. Just silence, heavy, trembling silence. Spartan snorted softly, breaking the stillness. Her name, that simple word, carried everything he couldn't say. Regret, love, apology, and hope, all tangled together. Amy swallowed hard, her voice trembling. "You're really here," he nodded. "I am." The distance between them felt endless, even though they stood just steps apart. Memories flooded back, the laughter, the fights, the goodbyes, everything that made them who they were. For a long moment, neither moved. They just looked at each other, eyes searching for the people they used to be. Then Lyndy's voice echoed from the house. "Mom, dinner's ready." Amy turned her head, and when she looked back, Ty was still there, but now with tears in his eyes. Her voice softened. "She's grown so much." Ty smiled faintly. "I know." Amy's heart twisted. That I know carried so much pain, the missed birthdays. The nights he wasn't there, the first steps he never saw, the wind blew between them, carrying the scent of rain and dust in memory. And for the first time in years, Amy stepped forward. Not with anger, not with questions, just with the quiet courage of someone who still loved, despite everything. They didn't hug. They didn't speak. Their eyes said everything, and in that silence, that breathtaking, fragile silence, Heartland seemed to breathe again. It was as if the land itself had been waiting for this moment, for two hearts to find their way. Back home, the evening settled gently over Heartland, wrapping the ranch in the soft hum of crickets and the golden glow of lanterns flickering in the barn. The sky had turned a deep shade of violet, and a thin mist drifted across the pastures. Everything felt still, almost sacred. Amy stood by the porch, her arms crossed, watching Ty through the open barn door. He was there again, in the same place where he used to work late nights fixing saddles, brushing down horses, humming softly to himself. Only now, the years had carved stories into his silence. She didn't know whether to go to him or let him be. Part of her wanted to ask why he left, why he stayed away, why he didn't come back sooner. But another part of her feared the answers. Some truths hurt more than lies. Inside the barn, Ty moved slowly, almost like he was afraid to touch anything. Every corner held memories, Amy's laughter echoing off the walls, Jack's old radio playing in the background, Lyndy's first steps on the hay floor. He closed his eyes for a second, and the ghosts of those moments surrounded him. Amy finally walked in, her boots making soft thuds on the wooden floor. For a moment, neither spoke. The air between them was heavy, but it wasn't cold, it was warm, with all the feelings they didn't know how to express. Ty broke the silence first. "Everything looks the same." Amy nodded. "It is, except everything's different." He turned toward her, his voice low. "I've replayed this moment 1,000 times in my head, Amy, but being here, it feels like a dream I'm scared to wake up from." Her eyes softened, but she stayed guarded. "You should have come home sooner." Ty looked down. "I wanted to. Every day. But the more time passed, the harder it got. I didn't know if I still had a place here." Amy's breath caught. For years, she'd dreamed of hearing those words. Not for comfort, but for understanding. And now that they came, they didn't sound like excuses. They sounded like truth. Outside, the wind brushed against the barn doors. Carrying the smell of rain and wildflowers, Amy stepped closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "You still do, Ty. You always did. You just forgot the way back." He looked up at her then, really looked at her, and for the first time in years, she saw that same spark in his eyes. The man she loved was still there, buried beneath the dust of time and guilt. A long silence followed. No dramatic music, no sudden embrace. Just two hearts remembering how to beat in rhythm again. From the porch, Jack watched quietly. He didn't move, didn't interrupt. He just stood there, his hat low over his eyes, a faint smile tugging at his lips. He'd seen a lot in his life, but few things more powerful than forgiveness finding its way home. Amy turned to Ty. "You must be hungry," he nodded, smiling softly. "I could eat." "If you're sure, I'm welcome." Amy looked at him, the man who had once been her whole world, now standing before her like a stranger she still loved. "You're home, Ty. That's enough for tonight." And as they walked toward the house under the pale moonlight, the ranch seemed to sigh a long, peaceful breath after years of holding it in. Because sometimes, the hardest part isn't saying goodbye. It's learning how to say welcome back. The night was quiet. The kind of quiet that only Heartland knew. 1,000 stars shimmered above the open sky, and the old windmill turned lazily in the cool breeze. Inside the ranch house, the lamps glowed with a warm, golden light. The air smelled of coffee and rain, and the walls seemed to hum with memories that had never really faded. Amy sat at the kitchen table, half-empty mug in her hands. The clock ticked softly on the wall. Every sound, the creak of the wood floor, the whisper of the curtains, felt heavier now that Ty was back. Across from her, he sat in silence, his eyes lowered, his hands clasped, as if afraid to break the fragile peace between them. They didn't need to speak. Not yet. Some conversations begin in silence. Ty finally broke it with a voice rough from years of saying too little. "This place. It's like time stopped here." Amy looked around the room. "No, Ty. Time didn't stop. It just kept moving without you." Her words weren't cruel. They were honest. And honesty, after so many years of distance, was the most painful kindness of all. He nodded slowly. "I know, and I hate that I let it happen." Amy's gaze softened. She wanted to be angry, to shout, to demand answers, but the sight of him sitting there, shoulders slumped, eyes full of regret, stole the anger from her heart. "You saved lives out there, didn't you?" she asked. Ty's voice trembled slightly. "I tried to, but I lost myself doing it. Every person I helped just reminded me of what I'd left behind. I thought if I kept moving, maybe I wouldn't feel the weight of it. But the truth is, Amy, you can't outrun what you love." The room fell still again. Only the ticking clock dared to speak. Amy took a deep breath and looked out the window. Lyndy's toys were scattered across the porch, a sign of all the years Ty had missed. She turned back to him, her voice quiet but steady. "She's a lot like you, you know, brave, stubborn, always ready to help someone else before herself." Ty smiled faintly, his eyes glassy. "I'd like to meet her, if she'll let me." "She will, but not tonight. Tonight's just for us for a long while." They sat in that shared silence, two souls relearning how to be in the same room again. The tension wasn't gone. It was simply resting, like an old wound beginning to heal. Outside, the sky rumbled softly with distant thunder. Amy stood and walked to the porch. Ty followed her, stopping just beside the doorframe. The night air brushed against their faces, cool and calm. The fields stretched out endlessly before them, glowing silver under the moonlight. "Do you remember that night?" Amy asked. "The storm that hit during the cattle roundup? You said the sky was angry." Ty chuckled softly. "Yeah, and you said maybe the sky was just lonely." Their laughter came quietly, like a melody only they remembered. For a moment, the years between them melted away. It was just Ty and Amy again, two hearts beneath the stars, standing shoulder to shoulder, trying to find their way back to each other. The camera pans up to the night sky. Vast, endless, full of hope. Because sometimes healing doesn't begin with words. It begins with silence, shared between two people who once forgot how to listen. The first light of dawn spilled across the Heartland Valley, brushing the fields with gold. Mist floated low over the grass, and the world seemed to wake slowly, gently, as if afraid to disturb the peace that had finally returned. Inside the house, the smell of coffee filled the air. Jack was already up, whistling softly as he moved about the kitchen. Lou had come by early too, still unsure how to act around Ty after all these years. But quietly thankful he was there, Amy stood by the window, watching the sunrise. The light touched her face, and for the first time in a long while, it looked free of the weight she'd carried. She didn't turn when Ty entered the room behind her. She just knew he was there. Some presences don't need to be seen to be felt. He stopped a few steps away. "Morning," he said softly. Amy smiled faintly. "Morning." They both looked out toward the pasture where Spartan grazed beside a smaller horse. The sky above them was painted in soft pinks and oranges, the color of new beginnings. Ty spoke again, his voice full of quiet emotion. "It's strange. I've dreamed of this sunrise for years, but standing here now, it feels like I'm dreaming all over again." Amy turned to face him. "Dreams end, Ty. But life keeps going. The question is, what do we do with what's left?" Before he could answer, the sound of small footsteps echoed from the hallway. Lyndy appeared, rubbing sleep from her eyes, clutching her stuffed pony. She froze when she saw the man standing near her mother. Ty knelt down slowly, unsure, nervous, the kind of nervous that comes from love and guilt tangled together. "Hey there," he said softly. "You've grown so much since I last saw you." Lyndy tilted her head. "Mom, is that?" Amy's eyes shimmered. She nodded. "Yes, sweetheart. That's your dad." The little girl hesitated for a second, studying his face. Then, with the fearless heart only a child could have, she stepped forward and hugged him. Ty froze. Then he wrapped his arms around her, holding her like he'd never let go again. His eyes closed, tears slipping silently down his face. Amy turned away, covering her mouth as emotion,